The US president meets Xi Jinping. Cameras flash, smiles are exchanged, and Washington declares a massive victory for American workers. But beneath the optics, something historic is happening. The United States, once the world's preeminent power, is quietly ceding leadership space to China. For Trump, this is a G2 moment, but in reality, it's Xi Jinping's moment. And this has big implications for India. Because as Trump bends to Chinese leverage, he's simultaneously tightening tariffs on India, a move to deliberately hurt India's economy. So today, we unpack a critical question. Has Trump lost the game to China? How did Trump's trade war backfire? How has Trump ceded power to China? And what lessons does this have for India? This is Shubhangi Sharma and you're watching Finepoint. Let's dive in. For all his America First rhetoric, Donald Trump's latest outreach to Xi Jinping looks like a concession, not a victory. Trump boasted about the US reducing tariffs on Chinese goods and claimed success in bringing Beijing back to the table. But what's really happened? Trump has effectively given China a strategic breather. He's lowered tariffs from 57% to 47%, paused export controls, and relaxed restrictions on chips and rare earths, the very technologies that fuel the global power race. And all this while imposing 50% tariffs on India. With China punching back and picking on USA's pain points, Trump has lost the appetite to take on Beijing. Instead, he now sees China as an equal, going by his G2 proclamation. In such a scenario, Trump has given up the fight and thinks he no longer needs India, at least not for now. And that's the key. Turns out, Trump 2.0's diplomacy isn't about shared values, it's about short-term optics and deal-making that flatters his image. This president does not have the stomach to compete with China. But how did that happen? You see, while Trump's global allies did not see his tariff war coming, China absolutely did, because it had a precedent. Back in 2018, Beijing was thrown off balance by Trump's unpredictable tariff offensive. The frustration in China was obvious, but this time Xi was prepared, with a playbook specifically tailored for Trump. This time, China was in control. China's new doctrine has three pillars now. First, weaponize both resource power and buying power. Second, every time the US hits, hit harder, hit swiftly, and hit with conviction. And third, balance between carrots and sticks. When Trump doubled tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, Beijing weaponized soybeans, stopping all purchases from the US overnight. Remember, China is the world's largest soybean importer, used for tofu, soy sauce, and animal feed for its massive pork industry. When China pivoted to Brazil, US soybean exports crashed to near zero, devastating American farmers, many of whom were Trump's own voters. Now think about this. China didn't just get away with hurting Trump's voters, it also got concessions in return. The pressure worked. Trump backtracked, pleading for China to resume purchases. The second weapon then came, rare earths. When the US targeted Chinese tech firms with export bans, Xi hit back where it hurt most, cutting off exports of rare earth magnets used in American cars, defense systems, and electronics. The result was chaos on Wall Street. Car factories shut down temporarily, US bond markets tanked, and suddenly Trump realized that China could cripple his America First dream in a matter of days. For Xi, that was the moment of truth. China did not just survive the trade war, it learned how to win it. Since then, Beijing has been building an entire export control regime covering dozens of critical minerals, not just rare earths, but gallium, graphite, and other minerals that power semiconductors and electric vehicles. So think about this. Out of a $598 billion US-China goods trade basket, soybeans make up just $12.8 billion, and China's total rare earth exports globally is just barely $3.5 billion. These are small numbers compared to the larger trade basket, and yet those two levers alone were enough to make Trump back down. These were precision strikes that exposed just how vulnerable even a superpower can be when the target is hit just right. If such small trade slices can bend Washington's will, imagine what China could do with the rest of its arsenal. And here's the genius of it. She uses these restrictions not to isolate, but to negotiate. It knows that there will be pushback from the United States, so it balances things out with carrots. Each time there's a meeting, there's a carrot and a stick. TikTok, soybeans, fentanyl cooperation, these are just bargaining chips. The real leverage lies elsewhere, in technology supply chains and resource control. After this meeting with Xi Jinping, Trump rated the deal 12 out of 10. But beneath the headlines, the deliverables were thin. Beijing agreed to three things: pause expansion of its rare earth export controls, resume buying US soybeans, restart fentanyl cooperation. But look closely. All of these things China was already doing before Trump's tariffs began. In exchange, Trump lowered tariffs and rolled back export control rules that had been designed to protect American technology. So back to the status quo, only with more concessions to China. Even worse, Beijing's concessions are time-bound. The rare earth pause lasts just 1 year, just enough to cover Trump through the midterms. And during that time, China can quietly expand its domestic capacity and prepare to hit back even harder later. This, therefore, was not a deal. It was a strategic timeout, and China is using it to strengthen its position. Meanwhile, Trump has declined to impose tariffs similar to the tariffs it imposed on India over Russian oil, fearing another Chinese backlash. He's worried that Xi Jinping could restrict rare earth exports again, proof of how much leverage China now holds. So when Trump says G2, he's actually conceding this battle to China. He is reinforcing China's leadership at the cost of the multipolar world. For India, this shift is deeply concerning because if Washington is taking a step back and following the G2 approach, the effects will be immediate in the Indo-Pacific. The power void will be filled by China, and the word of other regional powers will be marginalized in the larger G2 dialogue. At least that's the risk. Trump has pushed India hard with 50% tariffs, 25% only for purchases of Russian oil, with little regard for India's economic vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, the US has watered down its own goal of balancing China. The free and open Indo-Pacific slogan is now being quietly sidelined for trade relief and domestic optics. That means New Delhi will have to work harder to defend its interests. The burden of maintaining balance in Asia between a resurgent China and an unpredictable United States will increasingly fall on India. India must also brace for a more assertive China. It may be polite today, but that is not its permanent character. So what does India need to learn from this moment? Firstly, use buying power as leverage. Just as China weaponized soybeans, India must start thinking strategically about its own markets, from pharmaceuticals and generic drugs to defense and digital infrastructure. It should also invest in strategic buying. Use imports as a diplomatic tool, whether it's oil from Russia, defense technology from France, or minerals from Africa. It can do the same with the United States. Strategic buying can help protect India from trade wars in the future. Further, India needs to prepare a playbook for Trumpian trade wars and be ready to punch proportionately. With globalization fragmenting, trade wars are the new reality. They are here to stay. They are going to repeat over and over again. So India needs a standing mechanism to anticipate and counter these protectionist moves, be it from the US or China. It should be prepared to strike back. As India's export basket expands, it must also build the defenses to protect it. Then India must build internal capacities. From semiconductors to critical minerals, India must double down on domestic manufacturing and research and development. It must invest heavily in emerging technologies as well. This is where future leverage is going to lie. Further, there is need for reform to attract even more capital and scale manufacturing. Strategic autonomy needs economic muscle. India must accelerate reforms in logistics, taxation, and regulatory systems, making it easier for global supply chains to diversify. It should be not just away from China, but because of India. India must craft also a new Indo-Pacific coalition. If the US slips into a G2 mindset, India must work with others, Japan, Australia, ASEAN, Europe, to preserve multipolarity. You see, Trump's transactional diplomacy has opened doors that China is walking through confidently. The US might think it's sharing leadership, but in reality, it's surrendering it. And for India, that's the wake-up call. By standing its ground and showing patience, India has taken the high road so far. But with the China deal out of the way, expect Trump to play a few more tricks before he seals the deal. It is time now to negotiate with demonstrations, balance persuasion with pressure. Just as it is in the military realm, in the geo-economic arena as well, those who can not just withstand pressure but also strike back in kind will be the real winners.